Thank you.
Governor George Pataki served as the 53rd governor of the state of New York from 1995 to 2006.
As you get seated, Governor, this question comes from the Live Free or Die Alliance here in New Hampshire. What federal government agencies do you think should be eliminated?
Well, let me start very briefly by saying we should get rid of Obamacare. We should get rid of Common Core. And we should reduce the size of the federal workforce by at least 15%. Now, people are going to say, how can you do that? I was governor in New York 3 terms. I had an overwhelmingly Democratic state legislature. I was able to get changes like that through. I reduced the size of the New York state workforce by over 15%. We reformed entitlements, cut the growth in Medicaid. We changed the welfare system. When I left, we had over 1 million fewer people on welfare than when I took office. So we have to shrink the size of the federal government. One program I'd repeal is Obamacare. And by the way, to do that, we're going to have to get Democratic votes. We haven't even been able to send repeal to the president for his veto. I will work to get Democrats to support our conservative policies. I did that in New York.
Do you believe that the Affordable Care Act can really, politically, honestly speaking, be repealed?
Not only
what entitlement programs been repealed?
Not only can it be repealed, I think it has to be repealed. It's just going to get worse and worse. Not only is it hurting health care for Americans from all across the economic spectrum, it is also one of the reasons our economy is not growing. I can't tell you the number of employers I know who said we're going to keep our workforce down below 50, so we're out from under Obamacare. There are millions and millions of Americans working 28 or 29 hours a week because Obamacare would kick in if they worked 30. We have to put in place an alternative. And what I would do is sit down with enough Democrats, as I did in New York, to have an alternative that allows us to repeal it and replace it with a system that actually empowers the patient.
One of our folks here in New Hampshire wants to know, what group do you think is treated most unfairly by the U.S. tax code?
The veterans. I think not just by the tax code, but this is a country, and our freedom depends on those who put their lives on the line to defend it. And to have a health care system for our veterans that denies them service, where as many as 1/3 of those waiting in line for treatment have died before they even get there, and then an administration that lies about it is completely wrong. So we have to reform the health care system for our veterans. We also have to do more for their mental health. But on the tax code, the biggest single killer there is for manufacturing. I worked in a small town. I grew up in a small town, and I'm the only one, I think, who actually worked in a factory when I was going through college. My family all worked in a factory. They were great jobs. We have the highest tax on manufacturing in the world today. We have the worst regulatory climate for manufacturers today. We have to lower the tax burden. I would pass a law having our manufacturing rate the lowest in the world. That would allow our great workforce to compete and create jobs. And by the way, Jack, despite the bad federal policy on manufacturing, while I was governor, we were able to get over $20 billion in private sector investment in building computer chip factories in upstate New York. Great jobs. Grow the economy, allow the workers to have the opportunity to have a solid career, and shrink the federal government.
What should the U.S. corporate tax rate be? What number?
I think the federal tax rate, I think for manufacturing, I would say 12%, which is lower than the competitors. Our energy costs are coming down, maybe not here in New Hampshire, but in the rest of the country. We have the best workforce and work ethic in the world. We have entrepreneurs. We have risk takers. The federal government is the biggest single impediment. We can grow manufacturing jobs here.
Been asking the candidates tonight on Planned Parenthood, should taxpayers fund it?
No. The videos just point out quite clearly that Planned Parenthood has a horrific disregard for basic human life, and I think they should be defunded and the funds reprogrammed for other women's health care services. By the way, Jack, well...
Oh, okay, thanks, Governor. We'll get you on the next round. We'll get you on the next round. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you.
Now, I believe joining us from Washington are 3 senators who had to be at the Capitol this evening for an important vote. It was out of their control. They wanted to be here, but we're happy to have them joining us by satellite. And I believe we are joined by our senators. And we're just going to start with Senator Rand Paul. Senator, good evening. Running for president in 1952, General Dwight Eisenhower famously said, "I shall go to Korea." If you're elected president, Senator, name the first foreign spot nation you will travel to.
Well, first of all, thanks for letting us appear remotely. I've been leading the fight for the last 2 weeks to defund Obamacare, and I was lucky enough to get a vote on that this evening. As far as first country I will meet or first country I will travel to, I think it's important that we do engage with the world. So I think it's very important that even though China is sometimes our adversary, Russia is sometimes our adversary, that we do interact with these once great superpowers and emerging superpowers. And so I would say either China or Russia.
Senator, how would you lessen college debt for millions of Americans?
Well, I have a plan that would make it deductible. Right now, there are limitations. Certain families can't deduct it because of their income, and certain families are prescribed by the time. So I would say your interest and your principal ought to be deducted over your entire working career. Essentially, college is a working expense, and so I would let you deduct it as a working expense over and throughout your entire working career. And I think this makes more sense than the president who just says, hey, it's going to be free. There's no free lunch. You can't just offer free education. But I think tying it to work and making it deductible is a good idea.
Senator Paul, should an American citizen found to be fighting with ISIS have their U.S. citizenship revoked?
Yes, and in fact, you really don't have any rights if you're in the battlefield. If you're aiming a gun at one of our soldiers, it's not like you get due process. And some people confuse this because I fought long and hard and filibustered for over 13 hours to say that non-combatants do have rights and shouldn't be killed without due process. But those who are involved in combat really don't get due process and will be shot if they're fighting against America. But it is important to know that American citizens here do get due process. We do get the Bill of Rights. And the danger we've had in the past is when we've grouped people like Japanese Americans together and incarcerated them, or what we did to African Americans pre-civil rights days. So we do have to be very important that we individualize suspicion and that we not collect everyone's phone records all the time without suspicion. So I'm glad we've ended the president's illegal phone program, and I think this is a better protection of the Fourth Amendment and the right to privacy. And I am the one candidate who will do that. I'm the one candidate who has stood up to the president and say, no more, we're not going to let you collect our phone records indiscriminately with a generalized warrant.
Well, Senator, let me follow up then and ask you, what private information should the government collect from individuals to guarantee homeland security? Where do you draw the line?
Well, I think we should collect more information on terrorists, but less information on innocent individuals. We have a way now to get information. It's called the Fourth Amendment. You have to individualize suspicion. And actually, most of the times we've been attacked, we actually have had tips, and we just didn't follow through on them. The 17th or the 19th hijacker, Moussaoui, we had information and we failed to get a warrant. It wasn't that a warrant was denied. The Boston bomber, we had information, we failed to pursue it. Same way with Fort Hood massacre, had information and failed to pursue it. I think we can catch terrorists if we get more information on terrorists, but there's no evidence. There's 3 bipartisan commissions that say, you know what? The information we're capturing indiscriminately on all Americans hadn't caught any terrorists. It hasn't made us safer, but it has damaged our Bill of Rights, and it has damaged our right to privacy.
Senator Paul, but are you concerned that it might take some time in a terrorist situation with ICE or police or federal agents to stop a bomb going off if you have to get that warrant?
There are always imminent circumstances in which things can happen. If someone's screaming from a building, you don't stop to get a warrant. It's the same way with the bomb. So there have always been exigent circumstances. But for the most part, you do need to get a warrant. And the real question we've had is about collecting all Americans' phone records all the time. Is that a good idea, or is that a breach of our Fourth Amendment right to privacy? I think most of America agrees with me that the president went too far. This is a president who investigated Tea Party groups, has used the IRS to go after conservative groups. So I think it's really not a good idea to trust this president with our records. I'm glad that I stood up on principle and stood for 10.5 hours on the Senate floor to say enough's enough. The president shouldn't be collecting all these records. We can catch terrorists, but do it in a targeted fashion and do more collection of information on terrorists, just less on innocent Americans.
Thank you, Senator. My next question is for a colleague on your left or right, Senator Ted Cruz.
Governor Jeb Bush served as the 43rd governor of the state of Florida from 1999 to 2007.
Governor, is America doing enough now to prevent another major terrorist attack on U.S. soil? And what security steps are we failing to take?
Well, I think we've let our guard down a little bit. It's typical. It happens when you have an attack on our country, like happened in 9/11. We united, we responded, we created, I think, a security apparatus that kept us safe. And over time now, concerns about civil liberties and other things have come into the forefront. And I think we need to reinvigorate this. I think Senator Graham is absolutely right. This is a war against Western civilization. These are barbarians. As ISIS stays totally in a caliphate, literally the size of Indiana, in two countries, doing nothing gives them the chance to be able to send tweets out, 100,000 a day apparently, to recruit people here in our own country. And so we have a security threat that is real, and that we need to do what we should be doing, which is a strategy to take them out. And protecting the homeland is the first duty of the President of the United States.
Governor, President Obama recently referred to ISIS as the JV team.
He did.
I think arguably now we'd all agree they've graduated to a varsity threat. What would your plan be to defeat them? And if your generals told you that in a month or so, ground and air troops and special forces in Syria could significantly cut down ISIS strongholds, would you give the order?
I would take the advice of the military very seriously. We need a strategy first. This president has, for two times, has admitted that we don't have a strategy as it relates to ISIS. It's pretty amazing. Yeah, I think we need special forces. The idea of boots on the ground, I'm not sure that's necessary, but special forces, embedding our troops and our trainers with the Syrian Free Army, training them at a much faster rate. We've spent $500 million to have 60 people ready to go. I mean, this is absurd. If this is a serious effort, then we need to treat it seriously. And so engaging in the world, creating alliances with our traditional Arab nations that see this threat directly, supporting it with air power and military power, and creating a strategy and sticking with it. The final thing I'd say is that there needs to be a political element of this as well. If the United States isn't trusted because no one has a sense that we're going to be around, then it's really hard to engage with the Turks, the Jordanians, the Emiratis, the Saudis. They're not going to make the commitment.
Governor, you said to me behind stage when we met that you started today in California.
Yeah.
It's a big country, hard job running for president. You've been out of office for quite a while, and even your colleague Senator Rubio speaks highly of your time as Florida governor. What compelled you to run?
I think we can grow our economy at 4% instead of this anemic 2%.
You think we can get to 4%
absolutely.
GDP?
Yeah, and the fact that Paul Krugman disagrees with me warms my heart. The fact is we can grow at that rate. It will require fixing a few really big complex things. The tax code, how we regulate, embracing the energy revolution with a North American strategy that will allow for high-wage jobs to be created in our own country, and fixing entitlements, along with moving from a broken legal immigration system to an economic driver. All those things could allow us to grow at a faster rate. It allows us to solve our entitlement challenges and many other things. And in order to grow at that rate, we also need a secure world. I think I have the leadership skills based on my record to do that. We cut taxes totaling $19 billion, reduced the state government workforce by 13,000, 11%. We were one of 2 states to go to AAA bond rating during my time. I left as governor with a $9 billion reserve for a rainy day for the next guy, and we created 1.3 million jobs during my time. Small businesses, more jobs, more small businesses were created in Florida during those 8 years.
Real quickly, on legal immigration, does the illegal immigration problem a crisis? Should that affect the number of folks we let in legally?
I think we need to narrow the number of people coming by family petitioning.
So you'd cut it down some?
I would cut it down to spouse and minor children instead of adult siblings and adult parents.
We'll come back to it in the next round. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Carly Fiorina, the former CEO of Hewlett-Packard, was the first woman to lead a Fortune 50 business.
It's kind of a personal but a professional question. You've been in both, well, you've run for office, but you were top 50 CEO. I've had you on my show. You've talked a lot about your business background, humble start. But one of our people who submitted this wants to know, what's the least popular action you've taken as a leader, and what did you learn from it?
Well, if I may just start by saying thank you, St. Anselm's, for hosting this, and thank you, Joe McQuaid, as well, for reminding the political class that we don't have a national primary and managing to get all of the candidates here to the first in the nation primary state. Thank you for doing that. I think one of the most difficult decisions you have as a leader is to challenge the status quo, whatever the status quo is. The status quo in any system, in a business, in a bureaucracy, and especially in Washington, D.C., is powerful because people who have benefited from the status quo want to preserve the status quo. And so when you challenge the status quo, when you say, you know what, this problem has been festering for too long and we're going to finally fix it, or these folks have been in charge for too long, we've been talking about this for too long, we're going to fix it. The truth is 80% of the American people now think we have a professional political class that is liking the status quo, and we have festering problems. Our budget gets bigger and bigger every year for 40 years. We've been talking a lot today about illegal immigration. How long have we been talking about the border being insecure? 30 years. How long have we known it was insecure? 30 years. How long has it been insecure? 30 years. We talk a lot at election time, but somehow we never solve these festering problems. It's because the status quo is in charge. Leaders challenge the status quo.
Least popular action you took, though, as a leader?
I think the least popular actions are when you have to say to people, we can't afford to do this anymore. And Lord knows we need to do that in Washington, D.C.
Can you win with that message?
Of course, people understand. Honestly, our government has gotten bigger and bigger every year for almost 50 years. You have to invest in those things that are priority, securing the border, helping people who truly need help, and you need to quit spending money where you're wasting money. And we are wasting hundreds upon hundreds of millions of dollars every year. And by the way, we know where it is, because there are reports that come out every year. They land like a thud on Congress's desks, and literally nothing happens.
Former First Lady Hillary Clinton, I've noticed you've been a very strong and steady critic of Hillary Clinton. She's going to be testifying, I believe, coming up in a few months on Benghazi, maybe the emails. Do you think those are political inconveniences for the former First Lady, or are there bigger issues that the American people need to know about, and are there any potential illegal worries that you have on the email server or anything else?
I think Hillary Clinton thinks they are political inconveniences. That's what she gives off, but they are far more than that. She lied about Benghazi. They knew it was a purposeful terrorist attack on the anniversary of 9/11. She went to the American people and talked some fiction about a videotape. She stood over the bodies of the fallen. She has as well lied about her servers and the kinds of information she had on her server and why she kept everything on a single device. These go to the core of her character. But here's the thing. In order to beat Hillary Clinton or whoever their nominee turns out to be, we have to have a nominee on our side who is going to throw every punch, because this is a fight. It's a fight for the future of this nation. It's a fight for the character of this nation. And unfortunately, we know that sometimes the right questions don't get asked in a presidential debate.
Should Planned Parenthood receive federal taxpayer funding?
Absolutely not. This is about the character, the moral character of our nation. It's not about whether you're pro-choice or pro-life. Just as taking care of people who need our care is part of the moral fiber of our nation as well.
Thank you. Look forward to the next round. Thank you.